Okay, up next, I want to look at our clip view window. Okay, so that's this area down here. Now remember, there's two different areas that we could be looking at. Could be looking at the clip view window, and we could be looking at our instruments and effects window. I want to be looking at the clip view window, so that's this one. And by the way, I can toggle between the two of them with Shift Tab if you're keeping track of that, of all the key commands that I'm throwing out, even though I just said you don't really need to, but I'm going to throw out a bunch of them anyway. Okay, so remember that the clip view window does not change whether or not we're in session view or arrangement view. Okay, so let's look at a clip view, a clip here in arrangement view, and in session view, the clip view window is the same. I have different content right now between the two of them, but how it works and what's in it is the same. So what we have here is separate things for if we're in a MIDI track or an audio track. It's different. So let's look at a MIDI track first. So we've looked at how to make notes. All right, we can move notes around, we can copy notes, and put things on the grid just fine. Then we have this stuff over here. This gives us a little more information about our MIDI clip that we're working with. Okay, so we've looked at the loop length that we can adjust here. We can also adjust that by dragging this box out here if we have the room to do it. This position is where the loop starts. So does it start on bar 1, bar 2, etc. And what's important here is these numbers that we see here. What we're seeing is bar, beat, and 16th note. So right here we see bar 1 because it just has a 1. So that means the first bar, the first beat, the first 16th note. Here we see bar 1, beat 2, and then the assumed first 16th note. For right here, 1, 4, 3, what we're seeing is bar 1, beat 4, the third 16th note. Okay, so it sometimes can get a little tricky to keep track of your grid and where you are. We'll talk more about those soon, but that's what those numbers are telling us. So when you just see 2, that means the second bar. Okay, we also have our loop settings here, and then a couple of kind of composition tools that can be really fun. Let's make this do something useful here. Let's just do that actually. And let's set this to be a 1-bar loop. And let's just hear it. Let me put my start flag back at the beginning. Okay, that's neat. I can reverse it with this button. That's neat. If I want to take it back, I can either hit undo or I can hit reverse again. I can invert it. Right, that's a little bit different than reversing it. Right? Neat. I can duplicate the loop. Legato is a setting that basically means that it will play longer. We won't really be able to hear it in this context. We'll discuss legato more when we start talking about instruments and the legato setting. Okay, so just some general things. Now let's look at an audio clip. Here's an audio track. Okay, so this is what this sounds like. Let me turn off that MIDI clip. Okay. Super weird, but it serves my point. So a lot of this stuff works the same. Loop, position, length. We can reverse it. Let's reverse it. That's neat. Okay, and now we have warp settings here as well. So we're going to talk about warp settings a little bit more when we get into recording. But what warping does is it keeps everything in time. That's how we know what the tempo is. This one is hard to tell because it doesn't have a rhythm to it. But if we were looking at a drum beat, we would want to make sure our warp settings were correct so that it knew that it was in the right tempo. That can be a little confusing, so let's save it for a later section where we really dive in deep to warping. For now, just remember, warping is a thing. We can transpose it, which means move the pitch up or down. So let's move it way down. That's kind of fun. And we can boost the volume or cut the volume a bit. This is not a great way to deal with the volume. The better way to deal with volume is with your mixer over here. So this is where that track is. I can turn that whole track up or down. But in some cases, you might want to boost the volume down here. Don't ever do this, though. If you boost it to where it goes off the radar up here, you're going to have problems. So don't do that. That's the most I could boost it right there. Okay, couple other things that are in this window. There's a couple little hidden buttons down here. This L is for the launch mode. We're going to talk about launch modes more later. But what that means is what happens when I click on it. Does it start playing? Does it wait a second? Does it play until I click it again? Or does it loop automatically? There are some settings we can do that'll tell it how exactly we want it to behave when we launch it. And then our last one here is envelopes. We can draw an envelope. We can draw an envelope on this, and you'll see a lot of envelopes later as we get deeper into the actual production side and like producing tracks. Envelopes become a big deal. But basically what an envelope is something that opens and closes. So in this case, I have the volume, and I just clicked on the little pink line here and made a point. Now I'm going to make another one. So now the volume is going to go up over the length of the loop, which would be hard to hear in this case. Well, maybe not. So as it loops, the volume goes up and down. There's more we can do with that. There's a lot more. If you hit this unlinked button, things get really weird and interesting. Again, that's going to come soon. I know I'm saying a lot of stuff is going to come soon, but it's just because I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff quite yet. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming up, and I don't want to give you too much. We're kind of slowly getting into the deep stuff. Okay, so just keep rolling with me for a little bit, and we'll all be okay. Don't worry. That being said, let's talk about recording. So let's do some quick recording experiments in live and talk about how we set up doing actual audio recording and some MIDI recording in live.